The afternoon sun was soft and golden, spilling across the quiet park like melted honey. Children's laughter danced in the air, the rustle of leaves whispering secrets between the trees. On an old wooden bench near the fountain sat a little girl, thin, quiet, her hair tied in a messy ponytail. Before her lay a blanket spread neatly across the grass, and on it 3 empty plates. She smiled at them as if they held a feast. Every few seconds, she'd lift her fork, pretend to take a bite, and nod as if savoring a taste only she could imagine. People passed by, glancing at her with confusion, but she didn't notice. Her small hands trembled slightly as she held a paper cup filled with nothing but air. Across from her, a pigeon hopped closer, pecking at invisible crumbs. A gentle breeze carried the faint sound of a distant guitar. The girl closed her eyes and whispered, "Happy birthday, Mama." Her voice cracked softly, but she forced a smile anyway. On a nearby bench sat Ethan, a man in his mid-30s wearing a tailored gray suit and polished shoes. He had just come from a business meeting, a man who rarely noticed anything outside his phone screen. But something about the stillness of that little girl's world caught him. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She was pretending, like hope dressed in rags. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. Ethan tried to look away, but his eyes kept returning to her. She lifted one of the plates, pretending to offer food to someone beside her, someone who wasn't there. Then she giggled softly, the kind of laugh that hides pain behind innocence. He frowned. "Where are her parents?" he murmured under his breath. A park volunteer walked past, and Ethan asked quietly, "Do you know that girl?" The volunteer shook her head. "She's been coming here for days. Always sits in the same spot. Pretend she's having a picnic." "Alone?" Ethan asked. "Always," she replied, her tone carrying a trace of sadness. "Sometimes she talks to the sky." The man's chest tightened. He turned his attention back to the child, noticing a small folded note beside one of the plates. The edges fluttered with the wind. He hesitated. Something told him that note mattered. The girl began humming, a tune faintly familiar, one that tugged at something buried deep in Ethan's heart. He couldn't place it, but it reminded him of a memory long forgotten, his own mother singing him to sleep in a cold apartment, before success had built walls around his soul. For a moment, the world grew quieter. Just the sound of the wind, the fountain, and that fragile hum. A family nearby laughed loudly as they unpacked real sandwiches and juice boxes. The girl turned her head and smiled at them, not with envy, but with admiration. She picked up her empty cup again and raised it slightly, as if to toast their happiness. That broke something inside Ethan. He stood abruptly and walked closer, his polished shoes crunching over the gravel. When he was near enough, he crouched beside her blanket. "Hey there," he said softly. "Having a picnic?" The girl looked up, startled for a second, then nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, it's a very special one." "Oh!" Ethan managed a smile. "What's on the menu?" She glanced at her empty plate. "Spaghetti and chocolate cake." Her voice wavered. "Mama used to make it." The words hit him like a whisper through glass, fragile, but sharp enough to cut. He didn't know what to say. The girl looked no older than 8, but her eyes carried the heaviness of someone who'd seen too much too soon. "That sounds delicious," he said finally, playing along. "Is there enough for one more?" Her face brightened instantly. "Of course. But you have to pretend. Okay?" He chuckled lightly. "I can do that." They both sat cross-legged on the blanket. The late sunlight glowed warm against their faces. She mimed scooping food onto his plate, and he pretended to take a bite. For the first time in months, Ethan laughed, not out of politeness, but from something pure and real. The girl clapped. "You're good at pretending." He nodded. "You too." For a few minutes, they shared silence, just watching the sky turn from gold to orange. Ethan noticed again the folded note lying beside her cup. Something scribbled across it in uneven handwriting caught his eye. "For Mama." He swallowed hard. "Who's that for?" he asked gently. She smiled. "It's for Mama." She can't come to our picnic anymore, but I tell her about it every day. His throat tightened. Where is she now? The girl looked up toward the clouds. Up there. She's watching. A lump formed in his chest. He wanted to ask more, but her voice softened. She said, when it rains, it's her way of washing my worries away. Ethan turned his gaze upward, blinking away the ache building behind his eyes. The park had grown quieter now, and the first trace of dusk painted the sky. The girl suddenly looked down at her note, then carefully folded it tighter and tucked it beneath one of the plates. She likes when I write to her, she whispered. Ethan's hands trembled slightly. He had built his life on deals and deadlines, not emotions. Yet here, beside a girl with empty plates and full imagination, he felt something awaken, something human. The wind picked up again, lifting the corner of the note. Ethan reached out instinctively to hold it down, but the girl placed her hand over his. Don't read it yet, she said softly. She's not ready. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, Ethan stayed silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because some stories are better heard with the heart than the ears. The last of the sunlight kissed the horizon as the world around them faded into gentle quiet. The evening breeze carried a cool calm as the lamps around the park flickered to life. The shadows of the trees stretched long, wrapping around the bench where Ethan and the little girl still sat today. He didn't want to leave. Something about her presence felt sacred, fragile, like a snowflake balanced on his palm. What's your name? He asked gently. She brushed a strand of hair from her face. Lily, she said with a shy grin. What's yours? Ethan. She repeated it, as if tasting the sound. Ethan, that's a strong name. He chuckled. And yours is beautiful, just like the flower. Lily smiled, looking down. Her fingernails were small, bitten, her palms slightly dusty. The blanket beneath her was thin and worn, but folded with care, as if it were her only treasure. Ethan glanced toward the street lights. Lily, do you come here alone every day? She hesitated, then nodded. I like it here. It's quiet. And Mama used to say the stars show up better when you wait for them. The simplicity of her words hit harder than any speech he'd heard in corporate boardrooms. He took a breath. Do you live nearby? Lily's shoulders lifted slightly. Sort of. I stay with my Aunt Marla now. She says I shouldn't bother people. Ethan's heart sank. The tone she used wasn't one of complaint. It was resignation. He wanted to ask more, but Lily suddenly stood and brushed off her dress. I should go before she gets mad. Wait, Ethan said, his voice instinctively soft. Do you need a ride? She shook her head quickly. It's okay. It's not far. Ethan hesitated, unsure. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a folded 20. Take this, Lily. Get something to eat on the way home. Her eyes widened, not in greed, but in fear. I can't, she whispered. Aunt Marla says never take money from strangers. He lowered his hand. Then maybe we're not strangers anymore. Lily stared at him for a long moment, her lower lip trembling. Then, with a small smile, she said, Okay, but only if I can pay you back someday. He smiled faintly. Deal. She took the note delicately, as if it might crumble in her hand. Thank you, she whispered. Lily, he said softly before she left, can I see you again tomorrow? Maybe we can have another pretend picnic. Her face lit up, glowing like a lantern. Really? Really? She nodded, clutching the 20 against the chest. Then I'll bring dessert tomorrow. Mama always said no meal's complete without something sweet. Ethan smiled, his throat tightening. I'll be here. As she walked away under the amber glow of the streetlights, her tiny silhouette fading between the trees, Ethan remained seated, staring at the blanket she'd left behind. The note still lay there, untouched, fluttering slightly with the wind. He reached out slowly and pressed it flat against the fabric, resisting the urge to unfold it. Some promises, he thought, needed to wait for the right moment. When he finally stood and walked back to his car, he noticed something strange. Despite her poverty, Lily had left behind a single flower, an old paper daisy folded from a napkin, placed neatly at the corner of the blanket. He picked it up, feeling its delicate folds. There was handwriting on one petal. It read, "For tomorrow. Don't forget." Ethan smiled faintly through the ache blooming in his chest. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The city outside his window glittered, but it all felt hollow. He turned on the lamp beside his bed and unfolded his laptop, trying to wake, but every line of text blurred behind the memory of that child's smile. He remembered the way she spoke about her mother, the way she held air as if it were bread, the way she made a feast out of nothing. Finally, he shut the laptop. The quiet of his penthouse apartment was deafening. No laughter, no hum, no warmth. He walked toward the balcony and looked out at the skyline, the city pulsing like a living thing, full of people, full of hunger, full of stories like haze. He whispered to the night, "What are we doing, chasing numbers while children pretend to eat?" The wind answered with silence. He closed his eyes, picturing Lily again, her voice echoing softly, "She likes when I write to her." And for the first time in years, Ethan prayed, not for success, not for deals, but for that little girl to be safe. The next day, he returned to the park earlier than before. The bench was empty, the blanket gone. Only a few petals from the paper daisy remained, caught between the blades of grass. He sat down anyway, waiting. Minutes passed, then an hour. Just when he was about to leave, a familiar voice broke through the air. "Sorry I'm late." He toned. Lily ran toward him, clutching a plastic bag that looked too heavy for her small hands. "What's all this?" he asked. She grinned proudly. "Dessert. I told you I'd bring something sweet." He peeked into the bag and froze. Inside were 2 stale cupcakes, misshapen, cracked, but wrapped in love. "My aunt was throwing them away," Lily said. "So I thought maybe we could pretend they're new." Ethan felt his chest tighten again. "I think they are perfect," he said quietly. They sat under the same tree, sunlight flickering between leaves, and for the first time, it didn't feel like pretending anymore. Ethan took a careful bite of the cupcake. It was dry, crumbling at the edges, but he pretended it was the finest thing he'd ever tasted. "You're right," he said with a grin. "This might be the best dessert I've ever had." Lily giggled, holding her own cupcake like it was gold. "You're lying," she said between laughs. "I can see it on your face." He smiled. "Maybe I am, but that's what friends do sometimes. They make each other feel better." The word friend seemed to glow in the air between them. Lily's eyes softened, and she stared down at the frosting smudged on her fingers. "I don't have many friends," she said quietly. "Aunt Marla says people only care when it's convenient." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's wrong." Lily shrugged. "Maybe, but Mama used to care, even when it wasn't." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Ethan saw tears in her eyes. She quickly turned her face away, pretending to wipe frosting from her cheek. He said nothing, just let her breathe through it. The world seemed to pause for her. After a moment, she spoke again, her tone soft as dusk. "We used to come here every Sunday, Mama and me. She'd pack sandwiches, even when we didn't have much. Said picnics make people feel rich even when their wallets don't." Ethan swallowed hard. "She sounds wonderful." "She was," Lily said, eyes fixed on the fountain ahead. "But she got sick, real sick." His heartbeat slowed, like the story itself was gripping him by the collar. "What happened?" "She said it was her lungs," Lily whispered. "At first, she just coughed sometimes. Then a lot. One day, she couldn't breathe right. I tried calling someone, but her voice broke. We didn't have a phone then. The neighbors came too late." Silence. The wind carried the faint sound of a child's laughter somewhere far away, a cool echo of what Lily had lost. Ethan reached out, placing his hand gently on her small shoulder. "I'm so sorry." Lily blinked fast, pushing her tears back with the fierceness of someone too young to be that strong. "It's okay." She said she'd always stay close. "That's why I come here. It's the only place I still feel her." Ethan felt the sting behind his eyes. He took a slow breath. "She'd be proud of you, Lily." Lily smiled faintly. She used to say, "Kindness doesn't need a reason. It's the only thing we can give without losing anything." Ethan looked down at his own hands, the same ones that signed million-dollar contracts, yet somehow felt empty. Her words dug deep. He realized something then. She wasn't just pretending to eat. She was pretending life was still kind. They sat together for a long time, not needing words. The afternoon sunlight dripped like amber across the grass, catching the tears she tried to hide. Ethan finally asked, "Do you go to school, Lily?" She shook her head. "Not anymore. Aunt Marla said it's too far, and I should help her around the house instead." "What kind of help?" he asked gently. "Cleaning. Sometimes cooking. She says I eat too much, so I try not to." That sentence, so casually spoken, broke him in ways he didn't expect. He wanted to scream, to fix everything right there, but all he could do was stay. He looked around, thinking of ways to help. "What if," he said carefully, "I helped you get back into school? Would you like that?" Her eyes widened. "You can do that." "I can try." Lily hesitated. Aunt Marla doesn't like strangers helping. She says people only do that when they want something back. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "And what if I don't want anything?" She studied his face, searching, unsure, but somewhere inside her, hope flickered again. "Then maybe she'd let you, if you promise not to tell her about the picnic." He smiled. "Our secret." For the first time, she giggled again, her laughter tiny and bright. "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would?" "Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Ethan stayed a while longer, telling her stories about when he was her age, about how his mother used to work 3 jobs just to buy him 1 pair of sneakers, about how she'd leave him little notes in his lunchbox that said, "Keep shining." Lily listened, her chin resting on her knees, eyes wide as if every word was a light she wanted to hold. When he finished, she whispered, "Your mom sounds a lot like mine." He nodded slowly. Maybe they'd be friends up there too. That made her smile, and for a moment, she looked peaceful again. But as the sun began to dip, she grew quiet. "Ethan," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think people can see us from heaven?" He paused, looking at the horizon where the sky melted into orange and purple. "I think they can. I think they look down and whisper, 'Keep going. You're stronger than you think.'" She smiled faintly. "That's what I thought too." Then she reached into her little bag and pulled out a small notebook with a broken spine. On the cover, written in shaky pencil, were the words, "Letters to Mama." She flipped through the pages, full of scribbles, crayon drawings, and short notes that looked like they were written through tears. Ethan felt his chest tighten as he realized what he was looking at. Every picnic, every note, it wasn't a game. It was a ritual of love. She pointed to one page and whispered, "This one's about you." He blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "I wrote it yesterday after you sat with me. I told Mama that someone kind finally noticed." Ethan looked away for a moment, swallowing hard as his eyes began to sting. "Lily," he whispered, "you have no idea what that means to me." And as the last light of day slipped behind the trees, he realized this wasn't just a healing. It was his too. The air grew still, as if even the world needed a moment to breathe. The following week painted the park in early autumn colors. The grass, once bright green, had started to pale under the falling amber leaves. Each day, Ethan returned, sometimes bringing sandwiches, sometimes just his quiet company. And every day, Lily was there, waiting with that small, hopeful smile. One Tuesday afternoon, he arrived carrying a picnic basket, real food this time. "No pretending today," he said with a grin. Lily's eyes widened. "You brought food?" "Turkey sandwiches, fruit, and chocolate cake," he said, remembering her word from that first day. She gasped, covering her mouth. "Mama's favorite." They spread the blanket together, and for once, every plate was full. Ethan watched her eat slowly, reverently, as though each bite was sacred. She laughed between mouthfuls, cheeks puffed, eyes shining. He couldn't help but smile. She was life in its purest form, proof that joy could bloom even from concrete. After lunch, she leaned back against a tree trunk, rubbing her stomach. "I think Mama would be happy today," she murmured. Ethan's chest tightened. I think so too. They sat in easy silence, the kind that felt like trust. He finally asked, "Does your Aunt Marla know you come here?" Lily's face shifted, a shadow crossing sunlight. "No. She doesn't like when I talk about Mama. She says I need to stop pretending she's still around." Ethan frowned slightly. "But you're not pretending, are you?" She shook her head. "No, I'm remembering." That answer hit him hard, simple, yet profound. He nodded. "Then keep remembering, Lily. Some people only live as long as we remember them." She smiled faintly. "That's what Mama said too." He wanted to reach out, tell her everything would be okay. But deep down he knew, promises like that didn't belong to broken worlds. They belonged to faith. A few moments later, Lily pulled something from her pocket, a small, silver bracelet, the kind you might find in a thrift shop. The clasp was bent, the chain tarnished, but it had tiny letters etched into it, L plus M equals forever. Ethan leaned closer. "Is that your mother's?" She nodded, holding it close. "Aunt Marla tried to sell it once, but I hid it. Mama said this bracelet keeps her close. When I touch it, I feel brave." Ethan smiled softly, then never let it go. The afternoon drifted by like a gentle song. For the first time, he realized how much his days had begun to revolve around her presence, how her laughter had filled the quiet corners of his heart he didn't know were empty. When the sun started to sink, he turned to her and said, "Hey, Lily, what do you want to be when you grow up?" She paused, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "A teacher. Mama said I asked too many questions. Might as well get paid for it." Ethan laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. "That's a wonderful dream." Lily tilted her head. "What about you? What did you want to be when you were little?" His smile faltered. "Honestly, I don't remember." She frowned. "That's sad." He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I guess somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what mattered." Lily looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "Maybe Mama sent me so you'd remember." Her words hung in the air like a prayer. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives." Your story might light someone's path tonight. That evening, when Ethan dropped her near her neighborhood, he saw where she lived for the first time, a narrow alleyway lined with old buildings, walls chipped and windows cracked. A faded sign swung above one door, "Room for Rent." She pointed toward it. "That's where Aunt Marla stays. She doesn't like visitors." He nodded, his gaze soft but heavy. "I understand." Before she ran off, she turned and said, "Thank you for today." "For what?" he asked. "For reminding me how picnics are supposed to feel." Then she disappeared through the rusted doorway, leaving Ethan standing alone on the cracked sidewalk, heart caught between gratitude and ache. That night, he couldn't shake the image of that alley from his mind. The way she smiled despite it. The way she made everything lighter just by believing it could be. He opened his laptop and searched for schools nearby, then charities that helped underprivileged children. The more he scrolled, the more his eyes burned. He realized he'd spent his whole career making money, and not once had he tried to make meaning. He clicked on a link, sponsor a child's education, change a life. His hand hovered over the screen for a long time before he finally clicked submit. He didn't know why he did it, or if it would even help. But for the first time in years, something inside him felt right. The next day, he returned to the park with a small box. When Lily arrived, he handed it to her gently. "For you." She gasped. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside lay a new notebook, thicker than the one she had before. On the first page, he'd written in neat, steady handwriting. "To Lily, so you never run out of pages to write to your mama. Love, your friend Ethan." She blinked hard, then looked up at him with a smile trembling between tears. "It's perfect." He smiled. "So are you." And when she hugged him that day, small arms wrapped tight around his waist, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Peace. But what neither of them knew was that the next letter Lily would write would change everything. 2 days passed before Ethan saw Lily again. He'd stopped by the park at the usual time, bringing her favorite snacks, but the bench remained empty. The air felt colder that day. Even the fountain seemed quieter, its rhythm slower, heavier. He told himself maybe her aunt kept her home for chores. Still, something inside him wouldn't settle. The next afternoon, when she didn't appear again, worry began to twist in his stomach. By the third day, he couldn't wait any longer. Ethan drove back to that narrow alley where she lived. The streets were littered with wrappers and bottle caps, the air thick with the scent of damp cement and smoke. He hesitated outside the door marked Room 3B. From inside came muffled voices, one sharp, angry, one faint, scared. He knocked gently. The door creaked open a moment later. A woman in her late 40s glared at him through tired, sunken eyes. "Who are you?" "I'm a friend of Lily's," Ethan said. I was just checking if she's okay." The woman scoffed. "You mean that kid's been bothering you too?" His jaw tightened. "She hasn't been bothering me. I was worried. She hasn't come to the park." Aunt Marla crossed her arms. "She's sick, probably from staying out there too long, always running off like she owns the world." "May I see her?" She hesitated. "You got money?" Ethan stayed, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "That's not why I'm here." "Then no," she snapped. "We don't need strangers poking around." He clenched his fists, forcing calm into his voice. "Please, just a minute." Something in his tone made her pause. She sighed, rolling her eyes. "Fine, but make it quick." The room was small, barely large enough for a bed and a table. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows against the peeling walls. And there, under a thin blanket, lay Lily. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of footsteps. When she saw him, her face lit up, weakly, but real. "Ethan, you came." He knelt beside her, his throat tightening. "Of course I did, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" She coughed softly, the sound dry and painful. "Just tired." Answers I caught a chill. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, his hand trembling. "You should have told me you weren't well." She smiled faintly. "Didn't want you to worry. Mama used to say strong people don't make others sad." "Lily," he whispered, his voice breaking. On the table beside her lay her notebook, letters to Mama. She reached for it, her small hand shaking. "I wrote a new one," she said. "For you and her both." Ethan hesitated, then gently opened the notebook. A folded page slipped out. It was the same piece of paper he'd seen weeks ago, the one she'd left under the empty plate. He unfolded it slowly, the handwriting shaky but heartfelt. "Dear Mama, I met a nice man today. He reminds me of you. He smiles when I talk and listens even when I say silly things. I think you sent him to me so I wouldn't feel alone at our picnic anymore. If he ever reads this, please tell him thank you for feeding my heart when my tummy was empty. Love, Lily." Ethan's vision blurred. He pressed the note to his chest, tears slipping down his face. Lily reached out, touching his wrist gently. "You're crying," she whispered. He forced a smile through the ache. "They are happy tears." She smiled weakly. "Then I'm glad. Mama said hearts cry too when they are full." If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The sound of the flickering bulb filled the silence. Ethan wanted to take her away from that room, from the smell of decay and hopelessness. He wanted to give her warmth, safety, the things every child deserved. He turned to Aunt Marla. "She needs a doctor." Marla shrugged. "Doctors cost money." Ethan stood up, his voice suddenly firm. "Then I'll pay. All of it." That caught her attention. "You serious?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Pack whatever she needs. I'm taking her to the hospital now." Marla eyed him suspiciously, then smirked. "Fine. She's your problem now." Those words made his blood boil, but he didn't respond. He lifted Lily carefully into his arms. She was feather-light, fragile as breath. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." Lily's eyes fluttered. "I knew you'd come," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mama said you would." He pressed his lips together to keep from breaking. "Rest, Lily. We'll get you better soon." Outside, the rain had begun, Light at first, then heavier, washing the dirt from the streets, the air filled with a scent of new beginnings. Ethan looked up toward the clouds and whispered, "If you're up there, watch her for me." The rain answered in soft drops, almost like tears from heaven. He tightened his grip on the small child in his arms and hurried toward his car, her notebook pressed against his chest, the words feeding my heart echoing louder than any storm. And as he drove through the rain, one thought refused to leave him, that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the only one who'd been saved. Rain pounded the windshield as Ethan's car sped through the city, wipers thrashing like frantic metronomes. Lily lay wrapped in his jacket, her tiny frame trembling. Each cough sounded like a crack in his own chest. "Hang in there, sweetheart," he whispered, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching over to make sure she was still breathing steady. "We're almost there." Her eyelids fluttered. "Ethan, is it far?" "Not far," he said quickly. "Just a few more minutes." The car skidded slightly as it turned into the hospital driveway, tires splashing through puddles. He parked crookedly and rushed out into the storm, scooping her up in his arms. Rain soaked his suit, but he didn't care. Inside, the fluorescent lights glared too bright, the sterile smell hitting hard. "Help!" he shouted at the nurse's desk. "She needs a doctor, now." Within seconds, nurses wheeled over a gurney. They lifted Lily gently, attaching monitors, oxygen, needles. Ethan tried to follow, but a nurse held up a hand. "Sir, please wait here." He watched helplessly as the doors swung shut behind her, sealing her away. Time lost meaning in hospital waiting rooms. He paced for hours, soaked through, rainwater still dripping from his hair. He couldn't stop replaying her small voice saying, "Mama said you would come." It haunted him, but also anchored him. She believed in him more than he'd ever believed in himself. Finally, a doctor emerged. Ethan jumped to his feet. "Is she okay?" The doctor's expression was careful, professional. "She's stable for now," he said, "but she's malnourished and has an untreated lung infection. We'll keep her overnight for observation." Ethan exhaled, relief shaking his whole body. "Thank you. Please, do whatever it takes." "She'll need proper rest, food, and consistent medication," the doctor continued. "Does she have a guardian who can handle that?" Ethan hesitated. "Her aunt. But she—" His voice trailed off. He couldn't bring himself to say the truth. The doctor's eyes softened. "Then we'll keep an eye on her for now." When Ethan was finally allowed into her room, Lily was sleeping, hooked up to N4. The soft beeping of machines filled the quiet. Her face looked even smaller against the white pillow, but peaceful, like the world's weight had finally lifted off her chest. He sat beside her, reaching for her hand. It was cool to the touch, fragile as porcelain. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise." After a long silence, her eyes fluttered open. "You didn't leave." He smiled faintly. "Not a chance." "Everyone leaves," she murmured, half asleep. "Not me," he said firmly. "I'm staying right here." She blinked slowly. "Mama would like you." "I hope so," he whispered back. Lily smiled weakly. "You remind me of her. She used to hold my hand like that." Ethan felt his throat close. "You know, she sounds like someone I wish I'd met." For the next hour, he stayed by her side, watching her drift in and out of sleep. At one point, he leaned back and whispered, "You're the bravest little girl I've ever met." She opened one eye, grinning faintly. "You're the kindest big person I've met." He chuckled softly. "I'll take that." The nurse peeked in and smiled at the sight of them. "She's lucky," she said quietly. Ethan looked at Lily. "No," he said. "I'm the lucky one." "Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did?" "Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." The next morning came gray and cold. Lily was sitting up now, coloring quietly with a pack of crayons Ethan had bought from the gift shop. He brought her a tray of breakfast, Royale eggs, toast, and fruit. Her eyes lit up. "You brought food again." He smiled. "Real picnics deserve real meals." She giggled, taking a bite of toast. "It's so good." Ethan watched her eat, warmth blooming inside him. But then his gaze shifted to the doorway. Aunt Marla stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp as glass. "What's all this?" she barked. Lily froze, mid-bite. "Aunt Marla." Ethan stood quickly. "She's recovering. The doctor said she needs rest and proper food." Marla's tone dripped with bitterness. "You think I don't take care of her?" He held his ground. "I think she deserves better." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know a damn thing about us, rich man." The words hit hard, but he didn't flinch. "You're right. I don't. But I know what kindness looks like, and I know when someone's starving for it." Marla's lips pressed tight. "So what? Now you're her hero." Ethan took a breath, calm but firm. "No, I'm just someone who can help." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she scoffed, muttering something under her breath before leaving. Lily looked up at him nervously. "She's just scared," she whispered. "She's been alone a long time, too." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe we both know what that feels like." She gave him a sad smile. "You're not alone anymore, Ethan." Her words hit deeper than she could ever know. He looked out the hospital window, watching the clouds part, faint sunlight spilling through like forgiveness itself. And for the first time in years, he let himself believe that maybe broken hearts could still learn to love again. Somewhere in the distance, the rain stopped completely. Days passed, and the hospital became their world, a quiet cocoon where time slowed and hearts mended in silence. Lily was getting stronger. The color had returned to her cheeks and the sparkle to her eyes. Each morning, she'd wake to Ethan sitting by her bedside, coffee in hand and that gentle smile waiting for her. "You're here again," she'd say, pretending to act surprised. "Of course," he'd answer, pretending not to notice the joy in her voice. "We still have a deal. Remember? Another picnic when you're better." Her laughter filled the room, bright and soft, like sunlight through rain. Every afternoon, Ethan brought something new for her, a book, a flower, a drawing pad. She'd fill the pages with sketches of picnics and clouds, always drawing two figures sitting together under a big tree, one small, one tall. Sometimes she'd draw a third figure, a faint outline above them, her mother always watching. He couldn't help but think how love never really left. It just changed its shape. One day, as he helped her color, she asked, "Ethan, do you have kids?" He smiled sadly. "No, I never married. I thought I was too busy chasing success." "Then who do you eat picnics with?" she asked innocently. He paused, staring at the crayon in his hand. "No one, not until you." She blinked, then smiled, that simple, disarming smile that made the world feel softer. "Then maybe Mama sent me to fix that." He laughed, shaking his head. "You and your Mama, always planning things." She giggled, covering her mouth. "We good at that." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence. Then Lily reached over and took his hand. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I get better, don't stop coming to the park. Even if I'm not there one day. Keep going, okay?" Ethan frowned. "What do you mean, not there?" She shrugged lightly. "Mama says life changes. Sometimes people have to move on. But memories don't leave, right?" His throat tightened. "No, they never do." She nodded. "Then promise me you'll keep having picnics. Real ones. For both of us." He swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "I promise, Lily, every Sunday." Her grin stretched wide. "Good. Mama would like that." That night, when she slept, Ethan sat beside her and looked at the drawings pinned on the wall. Every one of them told a story, one of loss, yes, but also of healing, laughter, and faith. He realized she had changed him more than any success ever could. She had rebuilt the part of him that once believed in people, in kindness without reason. The next morning, the doctor walked in with good news. "She's improving faster than expected. A few more days, and she'll be ready to go home." Ethan smiled, his eyes lighting up. "That's wonderful." But beneath his joy lingered a quiet dread, because home, for Lily, was still that cold room and the women who treated her like a burden. He spent that day making calls, contacting social workers, charities, anyone who could help. He refused to let her go back to a life where pretending was her only meal. By evening, As golden light streamed through the hospital window, Lily sat drawing one last picture: the park, the fountain, the blanket, and two figures sitting beneath the tree, both smiling. She looked up at him. "Do you think we'll always be friends, Ethan?" He reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Forever." She grinned. "Then I'm rich too now. Mama said being loved makes you rich." He chuckled softly. "Then you're the richest girl I know." Her laughter echoed again, but softer this time, a sound that carried peace. And outside, the sky began to clear. The last of the storm clouds parted, revealing a sky painted in gold and rose. Ethan turned to the window, his heart swelling as he whispered, "Thank you, wherever you are, for sending her." If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The next day, Lily was discharged. The nurses gathered to say goodbye. She hugged each one of them, promising she'd visit again just to bring smiles. When she stepped outside, sunlight washed her face for the first time in days. Ethan watched as she lifted her chin to the sky, eyes closed, breathing in freedom. He walked beside her, holding a bag in one hand and a little notebook in the other. "So, where to first?" he asked. "The park," she said instantly. "I want to see if the pigeons miss me." He laughed, shaking his head. "You and your pigeons." At the park, everything looked just as they'd left it. The grass glistened from last night's rain, and the air smelled of renewal. They spread the blanket, this time covered with sandwiches and cake, not imagination, but reality. Lily held up her plate with a proud smile. No more pretending. Ethan raised his cup. To real picnics and new beginnings. They clinked cups like two old souls celebrating survival. And as they ate, Lily leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, "I think Mama's here today." Ethan nodded, looking at the sunlight shimmering through the trees. "Yeah, I think she is too." For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Just a man, a little girl, and the quiet miracle of being found by love. And somewhere above, the clouds moved like gentle hands, parting to let hope through. That Sunday felt like a painting. Golden air, children laughing, the scent of warm bread and wet earth drifting through the park. Lily wore a light blue dress Ethan had bought her from a thrift store. It was slightly big, but she twirled in it like a princess anyway. He laid out the same blanket beneath their favorite tree. The same tree that had once sheltered her loneliness now stood witness to something reborn, family that had found each other by accident, or maybe by fate. They ate, laughed, and told stories until the afternoon grew soft and slow. Ethan noticed she seemed quieter than usual, her gaze lingering on the clouds. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Lily smiled faintly. "About Mama. I think she's proud today." He nodded gently. "I know she is." She turned to him. "And I think she's happy you came into my story." He swallowed hard. "I'm the lucky one who got written into yours." For a while, neither spoke. Birds circled above, their wings cutting arcs of light through the air. Then Lily reached for her notebook, the new one he'd given her. She opened it to a fresh page and began writing slowly. Her small hand moved with care, each word deliberate, sacred. When she finished, she tore out the page, folded it neatly, and handed it to him. "Don't open it yet," she whispered. "Not till I'm gone." "Gone?" He frowned. "You mean when you get home?" She shook her head, her smile mysterious. "No, when I'm really gone. You'll know when." Something inside him trembled, but he didn't question her. He tucked the note safely in his jacket pocket, pretending it was just another letter. The evening faded into gold. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder again, the same way she had in the hospital. "Ethan?" "Yeah." "Do you think heaven looks like this park?" He looked around, the soft light, the wind carrying laughter, the smell of life everywhere. "Maybe even better," he said. She smiled. "Then I'm not afraid anymore." He turned to her, his heart tightening. "Hey, don't talk like that." "I'm okay," she whispered, closing her eyes. "Mama says when people finally stop pretending they are fine, that's when they start to really heal." Ethan held her hand. "You've already healed a lot of people. Lily, me most of all." She squeezed his hand weakly. Then you'll keep our picnic promise. Always, he whispered. Every Sunday. The sky deepened into pink, and the air turned still. The last rays of sunlight danced on her bracelet, L plus M equals forever, before fading away. Later that night, as Ethan drove her home, Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window. She looked peaceful, smiling even in her dreams. He parked outside the building and whispered, "We're home." But she didn't stay. Her hand lay still, the bracelet catching the streetlight one last time. "Lily," he said softly. Then again, a little louder. "Lily." The world went silent. He sat there frozen for what felt like hours, rain beginning to fall again, just as it had the night he found her. But this time, he understood. Maybe it really was a mother washing the world clean for her child's journey home. Tears slid down his cheeks, warm against the cold glass. He lifted the folded note from his pocket, hands trembling. Slowly, he unfolded it. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means Mama finally came to take me home. Don't be sad, okay? You gave me more than food. You gave me love. You made me feel seen. Please keep having picnics for us. And if you ever feel alone, look at the sky. That's where we'll be, smiling. Love, Lily." Ethan pressed the note against his heart, sobbing silently in the dim light of the street. The next Sunday, he returned to the park alone. The same blanket, the same plates. Only this time, one was empty. For her, he placed a bracelet atop it, letting the sun glint off the silver. "I kept my promise, Lily," he whispered. "You'll never be forgotten." He looked up at the sky, the clouds parting in perfect stillness, and for a moment, he could have sworn he heard her laughter on the wind. Light, pure, eternal. He smiled through his tears. "You're home now." And then he sat quietly, beneath that old tree, eating alone yet never feeling lonely again. Because love, once found, never really leaves. It just changes form, from a voice to a memory, from a hand to the wind, from a picnic on earth to a feast in heaven. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Ethan would return to that park every Sunday. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes flowers, always a note. And every time he did, a single feather would fall nearby, as if someone unseen was still keeping her promise. And though the world rushed on, he carried her lesson forever. That kindness costs nothing, but it feeds the soul like the richest meal. Some hearts never stop pretending. Others teach us what it means to truly live. And hers, little Lily's, was both.